context of the short story The Lottery by Shirley Jackson. So in the entire lesson plan, students would read the entire short story aloud as a class. And then I'd anticipate the discussion to go over the course of a few days with reference to other texts that would highlight their understanding of the lottery, like The Hunger Games or Richard Connell's short story, The Most Dangerous Game. So today we'll be covering the lottery and an excerpt from that reading. And then also on some handouts there will be information like videos or movie clips that students could watch to enhance their understanding of that. So here's the excerpt. And on these sheets, you'll notice there are some portions that will be highlighted. So when we read it aloud as a class, if you want to go ahead and read the highlighted portion that you've been given, and I'll be playing the role of the narrator, so any dialogue or any words that go in between the dialogue, I'll be reading that part. And then there are also discussion questions here at the end. We'll kind of use those to initiate our discussion. And so if you want to pay attention to those, kind of read over those really quick before we start. And then just bullet point or jot down notes that you might notice from the text that might apply to those questions then. So as everyone noticed their parts then, if you have them, there's the highlighted portions. Okay. The lottery was conducted, as were the square dances, the teen club, and the Halloween program by Mr. Summers, who had time and energy to devote to civic activities. The original paraphernalia for the lottery had been lost long ago, and the black box now resting on the stool had been put into use even before Old Man Warner, oldest man in town, was born. Mr. Summers spoke frequently to the villagers about making a new box, but no one liked to upset even as much tradition as was represented by the black box. There was a story that the present box had been made with some pieces of the box that had preceded it, the one that had been constructed when the first people settled down to make a village here. Every year after the lottery, Mr. Summers began talking again about a new box, but every year the subject was allowed to fade off without anything being done. The black box grew shabbier each year. By now it was no longer completely black, but splintered badly along one side to show the original wood color, and in some places faded or stained.
Remember,
Mr. Summers said,
take the slips and keep them folded until each person has taken one. Harry, you help little Dave.
Mr. Graves took the hand of a little boy, who came willingly with him up to the box.
Take a paper out of the box, Davy.
Mr. Summers said. Davy put his hand into the box and laughed.
Take just one paper.
Mr. Summers said.
Harry, you hold it for him.
Mr. Graves took the child's hand and removed the folded paper from the tight fist and held it while little Dave stood next to him and looked up at him wonderingly.
Nancy next.
Mr. Summers said. Nancy was 12, and her school friends breathed heavily as she went forward, switching her skirt, and took a slip daintily from the box.
Bill Jr.
Mr. Summers said. And Billy, his face red and his feet overlarge, nearly knocked the box over as he got a paper out.
Tessie.
Mr. Summers said. She hesitated for a minute, looking around defiantly, and then set her lips and went up to the box. She snatched a paper out and held it behind her.
Bill.
Mr. Summers said. And Bill Hutchinson reached into the box and felt around, bringing his hand out at last with a slip of paper in it. The crowd was quiet. A girl whispered, "I hope it's not Nancy." And the sound of the whisper reached the edges of the crowd.
It's not the way it used to be.
Old Man Warner said clearly.
People ain't the way they used to be.
All right.
Mr. Summers said.
Open the papers. Harry, you open little Dave's.
Mr. Graves opened the slip of paper, and there was a general sigh through the crowd as he held it up, and everyone could see that it was blank. Nancy and Bill Jr. opened theirs at the same time, and both beamed and laughed, turning around to the crowd and holding their slips of paper above their heads.
Bill.
Mr. Summers said. There was a pause, and then Mr. Summers looked at Bill Hutchinson, and Bill unfolded his paper and showed it. It was blank.
It's Tessie.
Mr. Summers said, and his voice was hushed.
Show us her paper, Bill.
Bill Hutchinson went over to his wife and forced the slip of paper out of her hand. It had a black spot on it. The black spot Mr. Summers had made the night before with a heavy pencil in the coal company office. Bill Hutchinson held it up, and there was a stir in the crowd.
All right, folks.
Mr. Summers said.
Let's finish quickly.
Although the villagers had forgotten the ritual and lost the original black box, they still remembered to use stones. The pile of stones the boys had made earlier was ready. There were stones on the ground with the blowing scraps of paper that had come out of the box. Mrs. Delacroix selected a stone so large she had to pick it up with both hands and turned to Mrs. Dunbar.
Come on,
She said.
hurry up.
Mrs. Dunbar had small stones in both hands, and she said, gasping for breath.
I can't run at all unless you go ahead. And I'll catch up with you.
The children had stones already, and someone gave little Davy Hutchinson a few pebbles. Tessie Hutchinson was in the center of a cleared space by now, and she held her hands out desperately as the villagers moved in on her.
It isn't fair.
She said. A stone hit her on the side of the head. Old Man Warner was saying.
Come on, everyone.
Steve Adams was in the front of the crowd of villagers with Mrs. Graves beside him.
It isn't fair. It isn't right.
Mrs. Hutchinson screamed, and then they were upon her. Okay, so let's flip over to our discussion questions then. And let's skip down to number 2. So, what was the tradition that was in the village that people were following? Jeannie? What was it? Right, yeah, so they're drawing slips from a box, and it's a village stoning. So, did you guys notice that that was a family? Kayla, you noticed that? Okay, so how did you pair up everyone together?
Well, it was most clear at the end where it said someone gave little Davy Hutchinson a few pebbles, and then Tessie Hutchinson was in the center.
Right.
That's horrible.
Right,
That's
so,
bad at that point.
yeah, so the little son is like stoning his mother essentially, right? And then Bill Jr. and Nancy, they're all siblings, right? But did you notice the reaction, Bill Jr. and Nancy's reaction to their slips of paper being blank? Did anyone notice that? If you flip over to your second page, down towards the bottom, it says that they hold theirs up, and what did they do? What was that, Jan? Or Nancy and Bill, right, beamed and laughed, right? So, like, they're incredibly elated that theirs are blank, but yet their mother's in this position. Okay, so then what significance, if we move down to number 3, what significance do you think this tradition has on the village and the way they interact with one another? Lee, do you have any ideas? No? Did you understand the tradition, what's going on?
I don't understand why.
Why they would be doing it?
Yeah.
Okay, is there anything, like, can we brainstorm on that? Why do you think it even began? Because that's kind of another part of question number 3. Is there anything that the villagers might find essential to making their village smaller, or is it, do the villagers even know, do you think, why the tradition is continuing? If you look back? Yeah.
Since all of the villagers had forgotten the ritual.
Right.
And lost the original black box. So,
Right.
it was ones that they forgotten.
Yeah, exactly.
And ones that they've done it originally.
Good, yeah, good connection. So they completely forgot the ritual, like you said at the end there. They lost the original black box. What did the black box look like? If we go to the first paragraph, what are some of the descriptive words that Shirley Jackson uses to describe the box? Deanna, did you see any adjectives there?
Well, I was just gonna say that it was made from the pieces of the box that preceded it,
Right,
but it also notes like how it has gotten shabbier every year.
good.
And then it also says, by now it was no longer completely black, but splintered badly along one side to show the original wood color, and in some places faded or stained.
Right. Okay, so if we connect what Deanna shared about the black box, and then Jaylene mentioned that they've lost all sight of the ritual, then essentially, I mean, we have to infer as readers what Shirley Jackson would be trying to come across. If the villagers don't know anything about why they're continuing this ritual, then what is she saying about tradition, do you think?
Questionable. Or it doesn't necessarily have meaning, it's just what you do.
Is it all tradition doesn't have meaning, or is it just how we approach tradition, do you think? So are there, if we think about our own traditions, are there some traditions that we have today that we've kind of lost sight of, like lost the understanding of? Caleb, you kind of made this
A lot of
look like
people
you're thinking
just
about
think,
something.
I'd say Christmas.
Yeah,
But
Christmas?
especially for a lot of younger people, it's more, okay, well, we get presents, but why do we get presents? What was the
Right.
beginning of that?
Right, okay.
Because the Messiah was murdered.
That's time.
That's time. Okay.
Holidays and more, one that's considered a holiday, because we've lost sight of what is crucial there.
Yeah, okay, like what holiday is coming up? Right, Halloween. So, do you know the history of Halloween, Nate?
Not really.
That's
Yeah.
time. That's time. I was just gonna say.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So then the video clips at the bottom would just be what students could look at to further their understanding of that. So, How to Train Your Dragon, have you seen that movie? They're all Vikings and they have to kill the dragons, but they've lost sight of their feud. And yeah.
I had a question too.
Yeah.
Did you expect like you seem to be pursuing a line of questions about holidays, which it seems like that was going to go somewhere pretty cool. Is that what you would expect to come up in this thing? Did you kind of, was that in your plan, or did you just kind of build off the comments from your classmates?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. I have Halloween history as one of the videos that I had anticipated that students would then watch for the next day to kind of include, and I'd have them respond to the questions more thoroughly, take notes in class, but then hand in more thoughtful responses based on our discussion. So I think that's something that